Hey, Daan here, and in this video we are going to talk about the biggest mistakes accountants make when running the marketing for their firm. And I've made this mistake before many times when I was just starting out with advertising. And I know for sure that if you watch this video till the end, that you have a huge advantage on your competitors, because most of the accountants that are doing their own ads, or even agencies that are running the ads for other accounting firms, are not actually implementing the following thing that I'm going to tell you. And before we dive in, I'll quickly introduce myself so that you know who you are listening to and that you can actually trust what you're about to hear. So my name is Daan and I'm the owner of Accounting Kings, where we work with accountants to help them get more higher quality clients. We are currently spending around $50,000 on ads for accountants, has been doing this for about 6 years, and we only work with accounting firms. So let's dive right in right now. So I mainly want to talk about making decisions and iterations based on data instead of emotions. So a lot of the accountants that I talk to, if I ask them, okay, well, so a lot of the accountants that I talk to, if they say that they are running ads for the firm, I ask them, what is your process of optimizing your campaign and when do you decide to make an iteration? And oftentimes they either don't have a process at all and they just make an iteration on the ads when they feel like it. Which, if you are making iterations on your campaign, so it can be the creative, the audiences, the keywords, or just the body copy and the headlines itself, if you are going to make iterations on these campaign variables based on emotion over data, you will never ever create a good, consistent campaign. And in this video I will explain to you why. So the advertising platforms, they give you a lot of data, and they give this data to you for a reason, because they want you to make money. The advertising platforms like Google or Meta, for example, they give you huge numbers of data because they know if we tell our advertisers what's going on in their campaign, and if they can make iterations based on this data, they will get better results. Like, they wouldn't give this information to us if you can make a campaign work if you are just doing it based out of emotion over data. So the advertising platforms, they want you to use the data because it's proven that if you make iterations based on metrics and KPIs, that you will make money from your campaign. And if you are iterating on your ads with emotion, then you're not advertising, you are simply gambling. Now, what I see a lot of people do is that they are making iterations every time that they are checking the ads. So let's say on Monday you launch your campaign, you are very excited and you already know which car you are going to buy when this is working. But then on Wednesday you check your calendar and there are no appointments. And then on Thursday you are stressing out, you are diving into your campaign and you see that all of the creatives and the body copy and the keywords and everything, you see, okay, well, there's a lot of data, something is not working because I didn't buy my new car yet, it's time to iterate. Which, of course, I'm giving an extreme example here, but on a smaller scale, that is what a lot of people do. They launch a campaign with a lot of ad variables, they have the wrong expectations, they check in on the campaign, and every time they check in, they decide to make a change. Well, oftentimes you will actually find that doing nothing is the best solution. And this is actually for two reasons mainly. Number one, you don't have enough data. You need to wait longer to have the data to make a new conclusion on your iteration before you can iterate. Number two, you are making money from the campaign. So as an example, I have one client, she's a bookkeeping firm, and she only wants to work with a specific type of client. In the beginning, we were making iterations here and there every week around that. And right now we are at a stage where the algorithm has so much data that this is doing its own optimization. So every time that I'm looking in, sometimes for like 2 or 3 weeks, I just look at the data, I see, okay, well, we are in KPI, we are making money, I can make changes, it can work, but it can also kill the campaign. So if you are making money and you are happy with the results, sometimes the best decision you can make is not doing anything. Now, later in the video, I'm going to explain exactly which metrics to track, what their KPIs are, but most importantly, how do you actually know what variables to iterate on when the metrics are out of KPI? So make sure to stick till the end to actually find out what to do when based on data instead of emotion. Now, another thing that you need to realize is that if you think you are basing your iterations on data instead of emotions, but you do this with a too small data size, this can also have a negative impact on your campaign. So let's say that you launch your ads on Monday, and on Tuesday you check them and you see, well, I've gotten 100 impressions on my ad and it didn't work, so it's time to make an iteration. And you see, well, my click-through rates are very low, so I need to make a change to my photo, my creative from the ad. Although the thought process of I have a low click-through rate, I need to make a change to my creative is the right way of thinking, it's not a significant amount of data to actually make this conclusion. So if you think you are basing your iterations on data instead of emotions, but you have a too small data size, then that's maybe even worse than basing your iterations on emotion, because this can actually steer you to the wrong direction too. Will you are thinking you have a proven system and process of optimizing your campaign. So let's say that you give your ads 100 impressions and you think, well, 100 people, they essentially give their opinion, but that's just not enough data. And later on I will also tell you what the data sizes are, but it's important that you realize that if you make emotions based on data, that you always need to have enough data. Otherwise you are actually going into the total opposite direction. Then otherwise you are going to make an iteration on the campaign and you think it's based on data, the data is not big enough and it's going to give you the wrong insights. Now, the reason you want to have a set number of impressions or clicks is because if you just follow a normal optimization process for your ads, you literally cannot fail. So if you launch your campaign and you know already, okay, well, let's say I have two creatives. That's for a very simple example. I have two creatives with my Meta campaign or two headlines with my Google campaign. Just as a simple example. And those are just total opposite. Like one creative, one variable is based on numbers, like they show you the tax savings, and the other one is more based on emotion. What will you be able to do with $50,000 in tax savings? You are going to test what works best with my audience. And if you already know, okay, well, I need to get this number of impressions, this is the leading KPI, the click-through rate, for example. So I will wait for 1,000 impressions, and then the creative with the highest click-through rate is the one that I will pick. I will keep that one running and I will create a new variation to then go with another test. If you just systemize your optimization process this way, so you know I need an X amount of impressions with a certain KPI, and I will then go with the winning variation and then make a new iteration and then repeat that whole process, there is no chance that you will actually lose in advertising and lose money as long as you just keep the campaign going. Because if you always just make a new iteration and you always just set a small step into the right direction based on data, at some point it is going to work. Now, to make sure that you have enough data to make a conclusion on if your variable and your test is working, here are some numbers that you minimally need to get to actually make a decision on your iteration. So if you made a iteration on your copy, your headlines or descriptions, as a rule of thumb, I always say I need to wait for at least 1,000 impressions. This is both on Google and Meta. There is something to say that with Google, the number can be a little lower because intent is a little higher. People actually read more carefully what you do. With the creatives, we always say 2,000 impressions. This is mainly for Meta, because with Google you can add photos. Google search ads, you can add photos, but it's not that it's always shown, and also not so significant as with Meta. Especially with Meta ads, the creative is can literally be 80% of the results. So that's why I always give just a little bit more data to be 100% sure that I'm not going to make impulsive decisions. Then with meta audiences, I always say I want to spend at least $50 bare minimum before I make an iteration. The reason that I don't really give a set number of impressions is because certain audiences are smaller, but they will convert at a higher percentage. And that's why I want to spend a minimum budget, because with audience, I don't really look at that. I still look at it, but it's less important to me how many impressions it gets. Clicks, it's more important how, like what the cost per appointment and lead is. So for landing pages, as a rule of thumb, I always say I need to have at least 200 impressions. Sometimes if I see a very significant drop in conversions, I may make an iteration after 100 already, also depending on how high your cost per click is. But just to make sure that you're not making any impulsive decisions, wait for 200 clicks on your ads, 200 landing page views before you make iterations on the landing page, if the landing page is the bottleneck. With Google search ads keywords, I always say at least 100 to 200 impressions before I make a decision. Do I need to stop this keyword, or am I going to let this run? In terms of the keywords and the conversion rate, you want to, with Google especially, it needs to be at least bare minimum 5% conversion rate, and ideally 8 to sometimes 15%. So a landing page, just as a benchmark and a minimum for Google ads, I always say it needs to be at least 5%, ideally like average 8, and you can get it up to 15 to 20%. That's with Google. With Meta, it can be a little lower. I'm sometimes already like happy with a conversion rate of 4 or 5%. But the main thing that you need to keep in mind is my campaign making me money right now? Because I've run campaigns where the metrics are terrible. We have a cost per click of like $15 per link click. And we have a landing page conversion rate that is not ideal. And certain metrics can be totally off. Of course, one of those metrics need to be in KPI to make it work. But certain metrics can be out of KPI to still be in KPI with your return on investment. That's really important to look at. And then in terms of click-through rate, for Meta, you want to have at least a 1% link click-through rate. And it needs to be at least 50% of your click-through rate all. And then with Google, with Google search ads especially, you want to have a click-through rate of about 4%. And if you are going to do niche campaigns, so for example, keywords like accountant for a construction company, it's very realistic to get this to like 6%. So now you know, okay, well, what do my KPIs need to be in terms of like click-through rate, conversion rates, and when can I make changes? But what do you actually need to change? Now, the click-through rate is mainly based on either targeting, so audiences and keywords, the creative that you have, or just the text like headlines and copy and descriptions. So I always make iterations mainly on the creative with Meta, and with Google it's just a combination between the keywords that you have, what type of keywords, and also how good is your copy. If you are, for example, with Google doing broad match keywords, your click-through rates will always be lower than with a phrase or an exact match. And then when you see if your conversion rate is out of KPI, so it's below the numbers I gave you for Meta and Google, then you just need to make a change to either the landing page or the offer. Now, the offer is also something that can, of course, impact your click-through rates. So for example, with one of our clients right now, we are running a campaign for the real estate industry. They had a client and they saved him $418,000 on the tax bill with certain strategies. And of course, this gives the offer more weight because the promise is bigger. So the click-through rates and the conversion rates are also higher. But yeah, as a rule of thumb, the offer will have the biggest impact mainly on the landing page. So now you know I need to wait before I iterate on my campaign. So you know I need to get the data, you know what you need to get the data on and how much. And you also know what the KPIs are and how to get them in KPIs. So what do you need to change? Okay, so this is literally the system that I always follow for all my clients. And it's of course depending on, okay, well, where do we start? Sometimes we run a campaign for like a few days and we are already scheduling appointments. So we found the right fit and the right service market fit. Sometimes it can take a little longer, but you know for sure it will work because you just base it on data. Okay, so that's extremely important. That's one of the biggest mistakes I made. So I really hope that this will, first of all, make sure that you're not going to make the same mistake that I made, but second of all, it will just make you a lot of money, that you can finally service more people, which of course is something that you want to do, since you most likely know for sure that you have a great service, as many accountants do, but they just don't really know how to get those clients. So if that's you, you know that you can deliver great service, but you don't really know how to actually do all of the marketing, and you maybe don't have the time to create all of those campaigns. And there's a link in the description. You can click on it to schedule a call with me or someone from my team, where we will give you like free tips, essentially just a growth session, and also explain how we can potentially help you without any obligations. And if you learned something, make sure you like this so that the algorithm is going to show you more. Subscribe to never miss a video, which will be able to save you a lot of money so you can learn from my mistakes. And if you have any specific questions, just leave them in the comments. So thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.